Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Yom Kippur sermon with Rabbi-Cantor Chorny.
When my grandpa Jules died in 2017, he was just a few days shy of his 103rd birthday. I was pregnant with my second child, but I wasn't telling anyone when I flew to Syracuse to do the burial in sub-zero weather in deep December. Weeks after Grandpa's funeral back home in Los Angeles, we were discussing baby names and the possibility of honoring Grandpa Jules, his grace, his kindness, his iconic Southern drawl. I had a voicemail saved on my phone from the day our first child was born. It was Grandpa Jules sharing a hearty mazel tov with his deep Southern twang, telling us how beautiful our first baby was, how much he enjoyed the pictures of her, how he wanted to wish us all the luck in the world. Thinking of him, I reached for my phone and I searched for the voicemail. But it seemed that in a recent phone update, every one of my old voicemails was deleted. I sobbed as I tried to recall his voice. I could almost hear his closing words, "I'll talk to you again real soon." But it was gone. He was gone. It's amazing, isn't it, how technology can break your heart. I hadn't thought about that voicemail in years. And then on a long drive this summer, I was listening to a radio interview with Chiara Alegria Hudes when she told the story that touched on that old bruise. Hudes may not be a household name, but you know her work. She wrote the book for In the Heights alongside composer Lin-Manuel Miranda. Back in her days as a music composition major at Yale, she got word that the legendary jazz trumpet player Wynton Marsalis would be in residency for a week. Hudes sat in the back of the big auditorium at Yale day after day listening to Marsalis rehearse. One afternoon, Marsalis called out, "Hey, I hear you're a composition major. You ever written anything for trumpet?" "Yes," she lied. Marsalis smiled. "Bring it in tomorrow. I'll play it through. It'll be fun." Hudes pulled the all-nighter of all-nighters, producing a duet for trumpet and piano. Back at the auditorium, Hudes hit record on her portable tape deck and plunked out the first few bars. And then Marsalis came sailing in on a soothing, velvety note. Hudes was in heaven. She floated back to her dorm, recorder tucked under her arm. She sat on her bed and she rewound the tape, or at least she tried. The light blinked. Low battery. She hit play and she heard her own shaky fingers on the keyboard, and then nothing. The tape stopped. The machine was dead. Not even one note of Marsalis's interpretation survived. A deleted message, a broken tape deck. These are the kinds of losses that look small from the outside, but they do break your heart. They tap into the innocent sense we have when we're small that our favorite things will last forever. Our oldest kid had a favorite stuffed animal. Baby Bear, to use his full name, was soft and sweet and full of dried up tears. You can imagine the devastation when we flew home from a family trip to Seattle and Baby Bear forgot to come back with us. There was no telling that 4-year-old that her stuffy was just a piece of fabric, because it wasn't. He was the first thing she would hug when she needed a hug. Now he was her first real goodbye. When the wildfires raged across Los Angeles back in January, it was still the case that losing a stuffed animal was the greatest heartache that our kids could imagine. We gave them each a bag to fill with their most special stuff, just in case. And into the bags went all the stuffies, the turtles, the American Girl doll. I lay awake that night watching interviews with stoic Angelinos, their silhouettes frozen in the shock of ambiguous loss, not knowing what, if anything, of their homes was spared from flames and ash. They clung to one another as if to say, at least we are alive. But you could see in their eyes that their world was broken in two. The stuff that made it into the bag and the stuff that didn't. The next week, I wandered my own home in a daze of gratitude. I kept passing objects that I couldn't believe I'd forgotten to pack. The kids' bag of stuffies still sat by the front door, but our ketubah was still on the wall. It was strange. I didn't feel all that sentimental about the potential loss of physical stuff. Maybe like you, most of our important documents were and are preserved digitally. All of our taxes and banking records, the words we delivered to each kid at their naming, photo albums and videos of family karaoke. With all that stuff safe in the cloud, maybe we were safe from the pain of loss. The ancient rabbis gave a name to this specific pain, Yeush. Yeush is the sense of despair you feel when you accept that you've lost a specific thing that was once yours. That feeling that you'll never hear his voice again. That feeling that you'll never step foot again in your childhood home. Yeush can get really dark. It sometimes turns into a black hole that sucks you into despair. For this reason, Rabbi Nachman of Bretzlav preached resistance to Yeush, forbidding us from going there to that dark place. It's tempting to believe that you can avoid the pain of loss by rejecting materialism, by telling yourself that stuff isn't so important after all. Rabbi Norman Lamb, Zichrono Livracha, a former chancellor of Yeshiva University, taught that the stretch of holy days from Yom Kippur through Sukkot, that's a time for detaching from material things. He wrote, I take the purpose of Sukkot to be a continuation of that of Yom Kippur. Just as on Yom Kippur, the various deprivations or afflictions teach us to rely upon God and be independent of material satisfactions, so on Sukkot do we learn that it is, after all, possible to do without our well-built apartments, our beautiful homes, our well-appointed chambers, that even in a mere hut or booth, we can attain simcha, joy, if we rely upon God. So is it true of all of our worldly possessions, he says. They are good to have, but they are not necessary for survival or even for the attainment of happiness. Each year, we gaze up at the stars through the thatched roofs of our sukkah, and we marvel at just how little we actually need to survive. Do we really need climate control or a bed to enjoy a meal or a good night's rest? I can imagine what Rabbi Lamb would have said about the ceiling fan our family installed in our sukkah. You're missing the point. The point of the festival is to strip away material goods. You don't need things. On a Tuesday morning this past July, I found myself at a lecture during the Iowa Summer Writers Festival, featuring another perspective on ephemerality. Deborah Jackson Taff explored her new memoir, Whiskey Tender, stories and wisdom and insights from her Quechan and Laguna Pueblo ancestors. Taff wrote about the attitude of her elders who insisted that every aspect of life is meant to be impermanent. She shared the wrenching image of the Quechan funeral ritual. When one of their people dies, all of their belongings are burned. They used to burn their homes down too, Taff said. But then a generation passed and we forgot how to do that home burning ritual. And the elder said, well, that was meant to be. It was one of those things that were meant to be forgotten. Taff wrote about the heartache of watching her people and their rituals and their stories disappear before her very eyes. She said, the world was perpetually in flux. too sacred to tether. And the elders said this change was a part of the world's ongoing ceremony. Aunt Vi said it was a reminder that even ceremony is material. There was only true power and endurance in nature. Taff has watched in pain as her people and their stories shrivel from existence. I recognize that pain. It is the pain of Yeush. It is the pain of despair. It's natural and inescapable. When you live by a creed of no attachments and therefore have nothing to lose, you'll lose everything. But if you have plenty, then you have plenty to lose. There's a parable that's told about King Solomon, who was unimaginably wealthy. He sent his servant, Ben Yehoiada, out into the world to find a magical ring that he explained with a riddle. It makes the satisfied man feel sad, and it makes the unhappy man satisfied. The servant found a jeweler selling his wares on a carpet and asked if the man had such a ring. So the merchant went and carved 3 words into a ring, and Ben Yehoiada brought it back to his king. Solomon marveled at the ring, but when he read the inscription, he sank into disappointment. It read, Gam ze ya'avor. This too will pass. To the one who is suffering, to the one who craves hope, this phrase is fuel. This too will pass, and you will wake up tomorrow with the promise that even the worst day comes to an end. But to the one who spends his life amassing wealth, Gam ze ya'avor is a reminder that nothing, not the richest stocks of treasure in the world, is ours forever. We all lose things. All of us, rich, poor. We lose the kinds of things that keep us up at night. Wallets and wedding rings, hearing aids, handwritten notes, the last piece of the puzzle that took us weeks to finish, well, almost finish. We lose recipes and memories and recordings of important moments, like the time we played a duet with Wynton Marsalis. When Hughes tells the story of that magical night at Yale and her discovering that the recording failed, she says, you might have thought that she would have screamed in fury. But instead, and Hughes doesn't know why, what came out was a small laugh and an exhale. Maybe, she says, it was her giving in to ephemerality and the fact that nothing lasts. That attitude of radical acceptance, not I am having a moment, but I am in this moment. I think it's the secret to equanimity. The promise that everything will ultimately slip away is a white, hot firebrand, a searing reminder that we should appreciate the moments we're in and the things that keep us company along the way. This cycle of loss, the having, the losing, the despair, the letting go, it is a gentle rehearsal for mortality. We know that life is short, but still we build things and we buy things and we accumulate things that we hope will last, knowing that things never do. Last, that is, even love, especially love. And we do love, knowing full well that we will someday lose. A few years ago, my phone broke, and I took it to the store where the technician helped me recover the photos and videos that were stored in the cloud. There's a file of old voicemails here, he said. Did you want to keep these? My heart stopped. I ran my finger down the screen looking for my daughter's birth date, and then I hit play. I sat there on the workbench, curled around my phone, time traveling back to every moment when I played my grandfather's voice and felt him and his abiding, tender love. I just want to wish you a Zygazent, and we'll talk again real soon, he said. I found myself crying in the middle of the store, in the middle of a Sunday afternoon, crying because I could cradle his voice in my hand again, and crying harder because I couldn't call him back. In his Hasidic work, the Mei HaShiloach, the Ishbitzer Rebbe frames 3 categories of things that are lo livtoach. They are not promised to us forever. Money, time, and the souls of the people we hold close. These are the things that God lets us enjoy on borrowed time. Gam ze ya'avor, all these things will pass back into the hands of the universe, for they were not promised to us forever. Gam ze ya'avor, these precious souls with whom we shared our lives, these too were not promised to us forever. Gam ze ya'avor, today will pass and tomorrow will belong to the next generation. They may forget our words and our rituals and the sounds of our voices, and they may say that our way of doing things, that too was material, and our days will belong to the Sukkah of time. Is it too much to ask that we get to take a few things with us when we go? We're not asking for a pyramid filled with the things we wish we could take with us into the next life. Someday we will yield our time and we will accept the relative ephemerality of our existence, the patches of grass where our flowers once grew, but the wind blew them away. But if we're being honest, I mean really honest, I think we'd all wish for a small bag waiting by the door, some things to swing at our side as proof of the good stuff we did and the goodness we built, or a little recording we could play to remind us that we were always loved. When our ancestor Yaakov reached the end of his life, the Torah tells us, Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael lamut. It came time for Yaakov to die. The plain meaning of this text is that Yaakov, also known as Yisrael, didn't have much time left. But the literal translation, Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael lamut, is that Yaakov's actual days were coming close to dying. Rabbi Daniel Rose shares a teaching from the Zohar. When a person dies and comes before God, every single day that she lived comes with her. Each day stands and tells the heavenly court what this person did on that day, whether he used his time productively, whether she took advantage of the mitzvot that came her way, whether he made the most of the different yamim tovim and the different seasons and the different nuances of each month on the calendar. Each day has its own story to tell about us. When the time comes, I hope that each of the days of our lives are waiting for us at the door. We'll sit and listen as they tell the stories of all the lost things. There's the legend of Hudes sitting at the piano bench in ecstasy, time slipping through her trembling fingers. There are the stories of the missing wallets and where they went, and the socks and the stuffies. And there, playing over and over, are the thousands of precious seconds with the people we lost, restored to us, coming to thank us for borrowing their souls. This Yizkor, we come to greet them, all the lost ones, all the lost things, with a small laugh and an exhale.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.